Mr Mayor, from councillors Mr and Mrs Moody and also from County Councillor Mrs D. Sellis.
Thank you very much. Declarations of interest, you know this to say if you've got any declarations you want to make now, or if you discover them during the meeting that you feel you should tell us, then please interrupt and say. I need a declaration the time in the Lions, and there's an application later on for a grant for the Lions. Any other declarations? Councillor Barry Smith? Councillor Munro, Lions? Councillor Johnson? Right. We're discussing a grant for the Lions later. And if it's all right with council, what we've wondered about is whether all members, because there are 4 people who've declared interest, should be allowed to enter into the discussion, because they can provide information to people about what it is, but obviously not vote on it. Is that right, or what do people feel?
If I may, Mr Mayor, the council has a process in relation to the granting of dispensations which require the submission of those applications and the associated reasons prior to the meeting. There's then a consultation between myself and the Mayor and Deputy Mayor, or the Deputy Mayor and past Mayor if the Mayor is potentially prejudiced by that, as to whether or not a dispensation could be granted. So we haven't actually received an application in accordance with that. So it probably would be outside of our operating arrangements if we were to seek to grant a dispensation which hadn't actually followed that process. Okay,
so more than half, not quite half, are going not to be able to speak or vote. Okay, can I suggest we don't leave the meeting though? Or do you want us to leave the meeting as well?
It's a matter for every member, having reviewed the relevant section of the Code of Conduct, to make their own judgment as to whether or not leaving the meeting is required in the circumstances or not. So that's a member judgment issue.
Councillor Irvine.
The Lions helped significantly with Tabby Pride, which I organised, so I feel like that probably means that I can't vote on it either.
Okay, right, thank you. Anybody else who feels they can't vote in this?
I've been the next mayor to go back to, and that was in 2017, so that's quite interesting.
Anybody here who will be able to vote? Anyway, we'll go ahead with it, obviously. But right, minutes of the council meeting. Confirm minutes of the special meeting of Tavistock Town Council on Tuesday the 29th. You've all seen that. Everybody happy with that?
Agreed.
Okay, agreed. Thank you. Matters arising will probably be covered later. Public representations and questions. We've got 2 public representations. The first one is from Mr Pears, who basically can't be here tonight, but the clerk is going to read his letter.
I've said that I will read the question. So the council received the question as listed on the agenda, together with some supporting information which has previously been circulated from Mr P. Pears of Buzzard Road, Tavistock South West Ward. He has asked that the question be read in his absence, and the question is that it is submitted by myself that this town council should debate and declare that Tavistock is subject to a, quote, housing crisis, close quote. Will it do so and either adopt the recommendations herein or an alternative set of recommendations? So that's the question. I think for you, I mean, we would normally respond by letter. We do have a draft response here. If you wish, I can read that response to you, which has been prepared in consultation with the Chairman of Neighbourhood Development Plan Steering Group for accuracy. Or alternatively, we can just send it. The choice is yours, Mr Mayor.
Remember, quite a bit of this is to do with the neighbourhood plan. That's what the neighbourhood plan is doing. It's looking at housing at present. So is everybody happy that we just send a letter from the council saying we are looking into this? Yeah. Councillor Hepsey?
Perhaps I'm misreading this, but we're saying either adopt the recommendations herein or an alternative set of recommendations. The recommendations herein are...
I think maybe...
Is that circulated? Or?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think maybe the town clerk reads the reply that he sort of formulated with the help of Councillor Mann.
Right. Thank you.
And the answer to your question, Councillor Hipsey, is yes. We circulated previously the attachment which went with this, which was at some length. or went to some length in terms
Yeah.
of it. So the proposed response is that a letter be sent to the correspondent, thanking them for their question and advising of the statutory role of the Borough Council, both as the local planning authority with responsibility for the local development plan and associated policies, stroke any zoning for the built environment, and as housing authority. In that role, the Borough Council declared a housing crisis in February 2022 and is undertaking ongoing work in connection with housing needs surveys across the district. It is aware of the housing needs analysis conducted locally through the Tavistock Neighbourhood Development Plan Steering Group, NDPSG, constituted by the Town Council, which was informed by data from local estate agents as well as from the most recent census and the local authority's housing register. The NDPSG is continuing to gather evidence regarding housing need in the parish to ensure that this informs the policies of the Neighbourhood Development Plan, as well as the Housing Authority's policies and its work to alleviate the housing crisis that has been declared. In addition, the NDPSG has conducted investigations in connection with the viability of a community land trust to secure affordable housing for the town should residents wish to establish one. It also continues to work closely with the local planning authority to develop policies for housing and other land use in conformity with the wider national and local planning frameworks. Whilst the Town Council is not a housing authority and any land it has is either not suitable for residential development or in community use, it already provides some homes for occupation at modest rents. Consideration continues to be given to the Town Council's goals and priorities as part of the budget setting and organisational planning processes and as the neighbourhood development plan moves toward adoption. Should the correspondent or other members of the community wish to become more involved in planning for affordable housing, they are invited to attend at Butchers Hall on 6th October to find out more about the work being undertaken on housing and other aspects of the neighbourhood planning process, which is supported by both the town and borough councils, and where the NDPSG has a stall between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. at the upcoming health and wellbeing event.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, are we all happy that that's the letter we send? Okay, carried, thank you. The second one is from Jana Sanders of BID, who's got childcare issues tonight, so John Taylor is representing her. Do you want me to read her letter, or shall I read it? Does Tavistock Town Council continue to agree with the BID company that the introduction of charging for on-street parking proposed by the County Council would negatively impact the vitality of our local economy, the viability of town centre businesses, and that it would make life even more difficult for local residents and visitors struggling with the cost of living crisis? Basically, of course, in the past we have already said that we do support BID's attitude on that. We are going to talk about this later in the minutes. Is there anything particularly people want to say now, or are we going to wait until later in the meeting when the council is going to discuss it? Do you want to add anything, John?
No, just very grateful indeed for the Town Council's support on what we regard as a major issue for the town. Thank you very much indeed for hearing us out.
Thank you. I think the council are very, very aware of what a major issue it is and treating it very seriously. Councillor Hipsey.
I think, actually, in hindsight, in view of item 2 on the agenda, and I'm not sure whether I need to do this, but perhaps I should declare an interest as a bid director. I am a bid director.
You were appointed by the council, by us,
Thank you.
weren't you? So, no. Okay. Right, so we'll discuss that later, and obviously you're quite happy to stay if you wish to stay. Thank you very much. Right, items requiring a decision. General Finance, schedule of payments to consider and endorse the monthly accounts as of the 31st of July and 31st of August 2023. Any comments? Are we happy with those? Okay, yes, endorse, thank you. Budget monitoring report to consider and endorse the phased budget monitoring report as of the 31st of August 2023. Are we happy with those? Yeah, okay, carried, thank you. Budget and Policy Committee. To consider the minutes of the meeting of the Budget and Policy Committee held on Tuesday the 5th of September. Deputy Mayor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I rise to present the minutes of the meeting of the Budget and Policy Committee held on Tuesday, the 5th of September 2023. 157, apologies for absence. 158, confirmation of minutes. 159, declarations of interest. Items for recommendation to Council. 160, Tavistock Town Council Strategic Plan Review. The discussion was around the process to be followed, and a recommendation follows. Recommended that the Town Council on the 19th of September, A, agree the review of the Tavistock Town Council Strategic Plan for a further plan period 2023 to 2027. B, endorse and progress the approach as set out in paragraph 3.1 of the report with a view to completion in the current financial year.
Okay. Any comments? No? Is somebody happy to propose that? Councillor Johnson, second. Councillor Ward. All in favour? Please show. Carried. Thank you.
161, budget preparation and precept setting 2024-25. Members, we're approaching that time of the year again when we have to consider the financial position and to move towards preparing the budget and precept. The discussion here was largely about process and underlying issues. There is the recommendation that Tavistock Town Council receive the report and endorse it as a basis for the development of the draft Tavistock Town Council budget 2024-25.
Okay, thank you. Are we happy with that? Proposer, please. Second, Councillor Wenning. All in favour, please. Thank you.
162, sustainability and the environment. The committee considered a briefing note prepared by the General Manager. It is recommended that the report be received and the content endorsed.
Okay, everybody, are we happy with that? Any comments? Right, proposer, please. Councillor Mann, seconder. Councillor Johnson. In favour, please. Thank you.
163, request for grant funding. This is a request from the Lions Club, who are seeking a contribution towards the cost of insurance related to road closures that are affected in the furtherance of various community activities in the town during the course of the year. And after discussion, it was recommended that the request be supported, and the recommendation as set out in paragraph 5.1 brackets A to C close brackets of the briefing note be endorsed and adopted.
I can't really speak, but do people know what that recommendation was and what it... You must take over.
So, members, we were told what it would cost for providing insurance for a single event, and what it would cost for an annual insurance premium to cover the whole year. And from that discussion, we felt that we would like to make a contribution to the Lions' insurance costs, but that it would not extend to the full sum involved in providing a 12 months, as we felt that particularly the Carnival, which is an event organised by the Lions, managed by the Lions, and the funds raised to go to other charities rather than being primarily a town event, should not be covered by the council's grant. So we have recommended a grant. I can't remember the sum, but I looked to the town clerk.
700 and a bit.
700 and a bit. And as I say, the recommendation is that we support that.
I can't speak.
Oh, right, okay, well...
Do I need to give you the chair?
No, I think you just need to do the ventriloquist bit. Councillor Mrs Ewing.
Sorry, can I... Sorry to interrupt, Councillor Ewing. Can I just clarify? The legal position is that if the mayor or the chairman of the council is in the room, they have to chair the meeting.
Right.
Therefore, if it's going to be chaired by the deputy mayor, the mayor will need to leave or the mayor will need to chair. But the law is unfortunately quite clear on the subject. I'm sorry.
Hang on, I've lost my page.
Councillor Mrs Ewing.
I might be a little out of order here, and there's not enough people to argue with me on the topic. But surely it's a little churlish that we can't do all of it. Everything the Lions do is about the town of Tavistock. And to say, well, actually, because you do the carnival, and that's for you, and to give to charities that are usually within the town, we can't support that bit. That, to me, seems downright mean. And I'm sorry, but I think we should be supporting them for the full cost, whatever that may be.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hipsey.
While I thoroughly agree with Councillor Ewings, I do think it's somewhat puzzling, I think that's the right word, that the Lions are a great organisation. I have been a Lion myself. And they belong to an international, very large, one of the largest international organisations in the world. And yet that umbrella organisation seems, well, not just reluctant, but refused to help in this matter. And I think it's a great shame that the Lions have had to come and ask us. I do think that we should support them, but I think it needs to go on record that Lions International seem to be completely deaf in this respect.
Thank you. Any further comments? Town Clerk?
Just really to explain the rationale to the recommendation which was in the report. The Lions is a charitable organisation. Tavistock has many charitable organisations. In the main, all of their objects, to some greater or lesser extent, by virtue of their charitable status, are to serve the community or to serve community interests. The thinking behind the distinction in this case was to distinguish between those things which are done by the charity as part of its direct charitable objects, which should be self-funding. If they're not, then we're setting a precedent to fund all other charitable organisations for their insurance costs, because there is no distinction to be made in that case, on the one hand, and those things which they do for and on behalf of other community organisations, bearing in mind that in most cases the Lions do receive a financial contribution from those organisations for undertaking that, and that charitable contribution that goes to them from those organisations for those road closures then is put towards its charitable purposes. So it's a political decision, and it's for members to make the decision they wish to make, but it would be amiss of me not to point out that it would be very hard then to resist the precedent of any or other charity coming forward and saying we would like support towards our charitable purposes, which the carnival is, as opposed to work that is being done on a fee raising or a contribution basis for other organisations to feed back into the process. So that was the thinking behind the differentiation within the report.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions, please? We have a recommendation before us. Do we have a proposer for that recommendation? Councillor Hipsey. And do we have a seconder? Councillor Mrs Mann. Do you wish to debate this any further? In which case we'll move to the vote. All in favour, please show.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
And any votes against?
None. That is
None.
carried.
Thank you. Can we invite the Mayor back in, please?
Right, thank you. Back to you, Deputy Mayor.
Oh, it's me again. Items circulated for information only. 164, Protect Duty, Martin's Law. 165, Goose Fair. Which brings us to 166. We move. The rest of the minutes will be considered in part 2 of this meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. Development, Management and Licensing Committee. minutes of the Tuesday the 15th of August and the 4th of September, please.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I rise to present the DMNL minutes for Tuesday the 15th of August, as you said. 132, apologies for absence. 133, confirmation of minutes. 134, declarations of interest. 135, Dartmoor National Park Authority. 136, town planning issues. 137, general correspondence. 138, neighbourhood development planning, NDP. 139, urgent business brought forward at the discretion of the chairman. 140, planning decisions, little a, planning decisions, and little b, new planning applications. And the recommendation is that the council accepts as listed in Appendix B, and this be passed to the local authority for consideration.
Thank you. Are we all happy with that? Everybody in favour? Please show. Okay, thank you.
This follows on from Monday the 4th of September, the meeting then. 147, apologies for absence. 148, confirmation of minutes. 149, declarations of interest. 150, Dartmoor National Park Authority. 151, town planning issues. 152, general correspondence. 153, neighbourhood development planning. 154.
Councillor Mann, just have a second.
Sorry, I just wanted to speak to the minute 153 for the neighbourhood development plan,
Okay.
which was, I think I just submitted that we'd had our technical assistance accepted by locality, and that has moved forward. So I just wanted to let people know, because on the 26th of September, localities officers are going to be coming to Tavistock to go round to look at the town for the housing guide. We're going to be meeting at 9:30, probably starting off at Butchers Park Hill, and then taking them around to some of the areas in town that are outside of the conservation area, mostly because that's all been covered guide-wise. I'm going to ask a couple of people if they would like to, or if you have a particular interest in being able to show them something about the housing that you do or do not like, please let me know and I can put you in touch or get you on the schedule. It's going to be quite tight, and then they will go and take that time afterwards to go and do a little explore on their own, but they said they'd be willing to talk to individual people if you have an interest.
Councillor Mann, thank you for that. What was the day again?
September 26th, Tuesday the 26th, starting at 9:30.
9:30. And the meeting place is?
We're going to meet up at Butchers Park Hill, probably on the stairs, because I think that would be a good one to use as an example.
Right. Right. Thank you for that. 153, neighbourhood development, as it was. 154, urgent business brought forward at the discretion of the chairman. 155, planning decisions, little a, planning decisions that we've already sent off, and little b, new planning applications. Recommended that the views of the town council as listed in Appendix B be passed to the local planning authority for consideration.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Are we all in favour of those? Please show. Thank you very much. Thank you. On-street parking charges. To consider the council's response to pre-public consultation communications from the Highway Authority regarding the potential scope of arrangements for public consultation on the introduction of charges for on-street parking in Tavistock. Now, just so the public know, the council, there was a meeting last week and the Devon Council released 3 proposals that they've given for on-street parking that they don't wish to yet be known generally by what they actually are in detail by the public, but they would like our thoughts on how we want to move forward, and so that's really what we need to discuss, basically what we think of their proposals without going into any details and how we wish to take this forward. Councillor Ward went to the meeting with the town clerk, and I'm sure we'll have their input in a minute, but are there any thoughts at this stage at how we want to go forward, knowing that in the past the town council has been very much against the idea of parking in Tavistock, And it's really to do with have things changed now we've seen some proposals, and how do we wish to go forward. Councillor Hipsey, sorry, I thought you had your hand up.
Delighted. I wasn't going to.
Right, well, shall we have the town clerk start by just giving some idea of what the proposals are?
If I may, Mr Mayor, two components. The first one is what we expressed previously, and that was a view which was on behalf of the bid company, the Tavistock Chamber of Commerce, ourselves, and at that time West Devon Borough Council, which was to say that the proposals were ill-conceived during a cost of living crisis, especially for a town with a substantial and sparsely populated rural hinterland that is unavoidably largely dependent on private transport to access services, that they failed to acknowledge the unique street scene of the UNESCO World Heritage Site and Conservation Area. Then in relation to the impact assessment, that no evidence had been adduced to suggest that there would be any benefit to businesses from the introduction of them. In fact, we felt that there would be a disbenefit to businesses, that the proposals would not encourage the use of off-street parking, given that off-street parking was frequently at capacity in the main car parks, and DCC enforcement appears to take place on only a sporadic and occasional basis. That it would encourage the undesirable displacement of vehicles into residential parts of the town where there are already major daytime parking problems, and that it would not enable enforcement to be undertaken more efficiently, bearing in mind that DCC had previously turned down an offer from West Devon Borough Council to undertake that service locally on their behalf. And furthermore, that it would not make a material difference to sustainable travel choices, and then there was a whole reasoning behind that. So that was the representation we made last time. The meeting which took place on last Monday was one which was attended by representatives of the BID, the Chamber of Commerce, ourselves and West Devon ward members, together with officers from Devon County Council and the Devon County Councillor for the area. And it was made quite clear there that Devon County Council have undertaken no work to assess any evidence in order to test against the requirements of the Traffic Regulation Act, or Road Traffic Regulation Act 1984, and they have no intention of undertaking any work to adduce any evidence to establish whether or not the tests in the Act have been met. It intends to go out to consultation on a scheme for us and for the 7 other affected communities in Devon who are covered by this proposal, with a view to implementation either in the last quarter of this financial year, so between January and March next year, or the first quarter of the next financial year, i.e. between April and June. Now, if that is their implementation date, bearing in mind they have a statutory consultation process they need to follow, they would then need to consider and review that. They've got an implementation phase in order to actually put things like parking meters or metering arrangements and charging arrangements in place. That means that time is necessarily very short. So I guess from a practical point of view, for you as a council, the question is, first of all, whether or not you continue to be of the view that the introduction of car parking charges, both for the reasons that have been expressed previously, and in addition the failure to actually undertake any evidence gathering by the County Council, is a view that you still hold to. If it is still a view that you hold to, you might wish to add some reasons to that, then there's a separate question which is around how we actually deal with the possibility of collaboratively working with other affected communities, and whether or not together we could come up with a form of words which would enable us all to express the collective dissatisfaction and concern at the failure of Devon County Council to follow an appropriate evidence-based, plan-led approach in order to assess whether or not to go to consultation in the first place, because evidence comes first, consultation comes second, where evidence points in that direction. You don't go to consultation in normal circumstances in matters which affect the rights and liberties of individuals without actually having assessed and analysed appropriate evidence in the first place. 3 proposals were put forward by the County Council. Those have been shared with members beforehand, and broadly speaking, those are the full proposal, the intermediate proposal, and the lesser proposal, or the smaller proposal. So those are the 3 things that you've got on the table. If you wish to change the council's position, which is currently to object and to actually say, no, we support one or other of these proposals. If you don't support those proposals, it's then a question as to whether or not you wish to write back and to express that dissatisfaction, and whether or not you wish to act collectively with the other councils. And if that is the case, bearing in mind that that would involve some co-working, I would suggest that you might wish to delegate to the Mayor, Deputy Mayor and myself in those circumstances to come up with a form of words which actually works, taking into account the fact that we've got to collaborate and work together and to express your dissatisfaction. But of course, it is open to you politically, should you wish to do so, to come to a different view to that which you've expressed previously and to support one or other of the proposals. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Very useful. So, any thoughts? You've seen what the clerk has recommended, basically, or suggesting. Councillor Hipsey.
Yes, I will make my views plain this time. I speak as the council's representative on the bid, but also express my own opinion here. Firstly, I think I'd agree very much with the town clerk that I find it very disappointing indeed that the county council seem to be quite happy to make this proposal without really any proper consultation, but most importantly, no evidence gathering of any meaningful kind. Unlike the County Council, the BID have done extensive research and surveys into this issue. First of all, the surveys indicate that around about 35% of people using the town centre car parking bays. This was done on a live usage survey. About 35% of the people parking there do so for less than 10 minutes. I think that's very, very important. Also, 65% of the people parking there do so for less than 30 minutes. So if the County Council are in fact proposing to charge nothing for the first 30 minutes, there'll be very little revenue from this anyway. So that's one finding of the research work we've done. Another interesting one is that we asked respondents to give their postcodes. And in fact, just about all of them come from Tavistock or the surrounding villages that use those parking spaces. There were I think there was one from Taunton, somewhere else, but very, very small number. So the important thing I'm trying to get at here is if this proposal goes ahead, it will hit the residents of Tavistock. So this council is a very appropriate body to be making comments on this, because we represent the people of Tavistock, and it's those people that will be affected. Moving on, we also did an attitudes survey. We asked people basically what they thought of it, whether if charging was brought in, would that affect their use of the town and the shops, and what sort of typical spend do they do. And as it turns out, 89% of the respondents actually said that they would either reduce their trips to the town or not come completely. They would stop coming into the town. So obviously that would have a very big effect on our high street. I, for one, am very concerned at the moment. I think we all are about the health of our high street. We're losing shops on an almost daily basis. We're losing banks. As soon as we start making it hard for people to come into town, especially from outside villages, who do need to come in and drive into town, then we're going to see shops closing. And it doesn't take many shops, more empty shop windows, before Tavistock becomes an uneconomic place to come anymore. So that's... and a bit of modelling, actually working on the on the financial side, when we ask people how much they typically spend, and then looking at the number of people that wouldn't be spending that money by not coming here or reducing their visits, the modelling suggests that there would be roughly about 50 to 52% loss of revenue in the town centre shops. And I think that will be enough to kill off what we know and love about Tavistock at the moment. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Mann?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think that the lack of due process and the fact that they're just instituting essentially a tax on drivers and basically our businesses with no evidence, and citing evidence that's not really relevant as well, that doesn't seem to even relate to what they're actually trying to address with the parking scheme, is really problematic. And if there was evidence that we did have an issue with turnover or things like this, then we'd have to consider it. I just think it would be really wrong of us to say turnover and start looking at these proposals and say, oh, well, we'll go for this one or that one without having any evidence for that. So I think that particular piece is really upsetting. And I think the other piece that we have is this independent shops. And one of the things that definitely came out in the neighbourhood plan survey, but also in some of the evidence that we have around what do people like about Tavistock, is the fact that we are this sort of independent shopping centre. We're unique in that way. We're sort of seen, and that's actually almost the whole brand. And that group of people are fighting a lot of different fights because of the way that people go online, and you've got big box stores coming in, and you've got easy parking at shopping centres. So I think anything we can do to protect that particular group, which is actually very central to Tavistock's identity, is really, really important. So I haven't changed my opinion one iota, having looked at those proposals, and I'm not minded to support any of them. So I think any way that we can make that clear for our town is really important. I do think joining up all the rest of the towns is a good way forward. And I think the reason is because we'd have a bigger voice, and we're talking about Devon County Council, it's two steps up. So one town sort of making a plea is one thing, and maybe getting together with some of the other towns and saying this process that you've engaged with doesn't reflect democracy is really the way to go.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes, Councillor.
Yeah, I'd like to agree with Councillor Munro. In case that Devon County Council have seemed to taken the policy of bullying local attitude towards the parking, and they seem to be taking a very hard line on this and trying to and have recent, well, in 2010 they've had other historically they've had poor policy on this. So I think that they've taken the wrong attitude towards trying to engage with local and then local opinion, and they're not going to go, and that would be shown if they follow due process in the way that the public would reflect the town council's opinion that this is a very poorly thought out and followed through policy in terms of businesses and the welfare of the Tavistock.
Thank you very much. Councillor Munro.
I totally agree with Councillor Mann here. It's really another tax for Tavistock. We know that from a 2010 news story that Devon County Council hasn't changed. Evidence gathering is paramount, so a collective approach is now appropriate as due diligence has not been shown.
Thank you. I'm very much getting the feeling that basically the Town Council is still absolutely, having seen these proposals, is completely against the idea of any car parking. That the Town Council is against it, the people of Tavistock are against it, Bid is against it. I've heard no voices saying this is going to be good for Tavistock. So do I get the feeling then, and disagree with me if you want, that we basically need to write a letter to say that we disagree and why we disagree, that nothing has changed in our views, having looked at these proposals, and also, yes.
Members, we've addressed this issue twice before, both before and after the elections. The previous council and this current council have considered the imposition of on-street parking charges, and on both occasions came to the conclusion that we were opposed to them. What we have to ask ourselves now is that in the light of any additional information provided to us by Devon County Council, do we still feel the same, or have we heard anything at all to change our minds? I was present at the meeting where there were two officers from Devon County Council who simply stated that they use the retail premises vacancy rate as a proxy for any other indicator of the need for the imposition of parking charges, but without explaining to us how that vacancy rate translated or could be interpreted in any way to help us. The data they were using, I understand, was out of date. They had a vacancy rate of 8-point-something%. Further properties had fallen vacant since then, and so our vacancy rate was in excess of 10%. They provided no other evidence to support the imposition of charges. They had no interest in obtaining any evidence. When they were presented with the evidence that had been gathered by BID and others, they dismissed it out of hand and simply said that they believed that on-street parking charges would be good for the town. Now, I put it to you that we probably know the town rather better than they did. We appear to be, around the table, convinced that the imposition of parking charges would not benefit the town, and my view is that there are no grounds whatsoever to change our previous opinion, and that we should oppose this imposition.
Thank you. So if we're going to say we oppose it still, we then need to think about how we go forward, and then we come to this: do we work collaboratively, or try to work with other councils who we understand in the main seem to be exactly the same position we are for their communities, and we all oppose it together? Is there any advice or?
I mean, if I may, just in relation to the collaboration points, specifically for members' information, I have been in touch with colleagues at the other councils. There is, for those of you who were able to attend prior to the meeting, there is a draft form of words which has been circulated to those and which you have, which is inviting them to come together, if you like, to express I think the really quite deep-seated concerns there are about the failure to use an evidence-based plan-led approach to this, because, you know, at the end of the day, we all operate in local government, we all operate by a set of standards, and I think the one thing that we all agree on is that you make decisions that you can justify based upon the evidence, and this is not something which in any way, shape or form seems to be led by that. And I think if you are happy with a collective approach, what we really want to do is to draw Devon County Council back from the brink and give them an opportunity to actually think about what the right thing to do is for the communities across Devon, and that includes Tavistock, and what the right way to do it is, and that is you gather the evidence, and if the evidence then suggests there's a case, you go to your town council in the affected community and say, this is what the evidence suggests, let's have a conversation about where it leads us. But don't start with a view and never go through the evidence gathering process, because it's not a fair process, it's not a proportionate one, and it's not a reasonable one for a local authority to adopt. So, I mean, if you are agreeable, please say if this isn't. What I would suggest is, if you're happy to delegate to the three of us here to both respond in the strongest terms, reiterating your objection to on-street charging in Tavistock, and in relation to the three schemes which have been put forward as pre-schemes for consultation, and that you authorise us to go forward with other councils to see if we can find a common approach for as many of us as are able to sign up to that. Most councils will have had sight of that draft letter so far. Certainly their clerks have had, I think most of the mayors have had, and some of the councils themselves have had. And early indications are that at least half of them would be currently minded to sign up to that approach if you feel it is an appropriate one. Thank you, Mr. Leach.
Okay. Before we go...
Am I allowed to speak again?
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Town Clerk, for your thoughts, and I agree. Also, I think Councillor Martin alluded to the fact that strength in numbers, that's great. Let's get the other towns on board and see what they've got to say about it. But I'm also thinking about what Councillor Mann said about the sort of rather tenuous democratic path that this has been taking, if you like. It does appear that we were visited by two officers who put forward their proposal, and I would like to kind of think about how the people of Tavistock actually get to influence that democratically, and therefore I would not just like to shine the spotlight on the other towns, but also on our borough and county council, the elected members thereof, who I'd invite them to take note of what's been said here tonight and hopefully be on our side, because it will take a lot of people and a lot of effort and a lot of democratic will to make this work. Thank you.
I'm sure our county councillor will be listening as to what's happened today. So are we all happy to go along with the way the clerk has suggested? That he will write a letter with the two of us expressing our views to Devon Council, and also we will try and get some cooperation with the other councils. Everybody in favour? That's the proposal, yes. That's the proposal. Everybody in favour?
Carried.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. That was useful. Co-option. We had one lady who wanted to be considered as a candidate. She's now withdrawn. So we did have two people who said they would like to be co-opted onto our two co-opted vacancies. Both of now are not coming. So we are left with two co-opted vacancies. So if I go to the Town Clerk, he can tell us what he suggests we do.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Very much in your hands. The suggestion would be that in the circumstances we continue to advertise and invite expressions of interest on the website, but that we actually wait till after Christmas and we then do another publicity exercise early in the new year. The advantage of that is after Christmas people tend to be looking out for these sorts of things, but also we'll be in the run-up to the county elections, so people who are public-minded and publicly spirited will be a little bit more energised, and perhaps if we then run that for 6 or 8 weeks in the new year, there may be a different cohort of people who are thinking, because there'll be publicity coming out about elections and whatever else, who are thinking about how they can make a contribution to public life, and we then revisit this perhaps in February of next year or March, depending on where our meeting schedule falls. But it's very much in your hands.
Any thoughts on that? Councillor Squire?
I think we should make it clear that we've not been successful at this stage, so that people are aware before Christmas that we are not as yet fully complemented as a body of councillors, so that knowledge is out there. The next step, I agree with the clerk, is post-Christmas.
Yeah, so if somebody comes along and says they want to be co-opted, then we can consider them. Yeah.
What we would do is we would effectively create a list. He said optimistically, and we would hold that for the to the publicity period, and we would respond to them saying what the timeline was. Yes.
Okay, so everybody agreed that's the plan. Okay. Yes. Service reports. General Manager's report. Anything you wish to add to it?
Only one small element from the special council meeting that we had on the 29th of August around the additional works to the free main contracts, that I'm also looking at trying to enhance the lighting scheme to the front of the town hall. So that is something where I'm working on, looking at the adds and omits on that contract, to see if we can deliver that within the next couple of weeks.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to compliment the General Manager. It's not very often in public service, well, certainly not from the government, that they can say that this contract will be completed in full to scope and within budget. So very well done to everybody who's worked hard to get that to happen, and that's to do with the retaining wall at Market Road. I think we do work very hard, and Wayne does a lot of value engineering on projects to make sure that we do deliver things within budget. We don't have much money, but we make sure that every penny is spent to the best use. So thank you very much and well done.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, pannier market report. Any comments, questions? Councillor Ewings.
I'd like to congratulate the Pannier Market on item little b, the summer superhero trail, that they'd worked with Dartmoor Zoo on lots of free gifts and completion of the trail, and supported by the zoo, kindly donated half-price children's tickets. I know it's something in it for them as well, but you know, it's a good idea to work together on these things. So whoever thought of it, well done.
And lots of people obviously went on it, which is great. Good. Works Department report. We're all happy with that. And thank you. Town Hall and Butchers Hall report. Okay. Thank you for that then. Finance and other matters. To receive for information the following report, the assistant to the town clerk enclosed.
Can I just ask, please, if you've yet to respond to your invitations to the various events coming up, can you please do so by the deadline? Thank you very much.
Anything else extra for the assistant to town clerk, councillor?
Thank you. Did we want to sort out the rescheduling of the council meeting on the 30th of January?
Yes, we'll do that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We touched on that at the pre-meeting, and what the working suggestion was that in the event that the budget goes through in December, that if it's agreeable to members, then the general manager will take that meeting in my and the assistant of the town clerk's absence. In the event that the budget is going to carry through, then we might need to invite members to, as I'm the RFO, and the final proposal will be going forward at that stage, to consider whether or not to move to the 6th. So if it's agreeable, that's a decision we'll be in a position to make a little bit further down the line. So that's the suggestion.
Okay. So basically we keep it as it's in the programme, and the general manager will be the acting as the clerk. Is that everybody happy with that? Yes, that's fine. So that's what we'll do. Notes of the Goose Fair Consultative Group meeting enclosed. Any thoughts, comments on that?
This is a very quick update, which I don't think either of the officers will have seen. Item 7 on the assistant to the town clerk's report about the pay settlement. Nothing at 18:12 tonight. It was revealed nothing still. No.
Thank you.
Acton South West Council, Ian Morgan.
Devon County Council report. So we've got that from our county councillor. To receive any updates, questions from a council representative serving on any other bodies. Anybody got anything they want to tell us? Feedback from any members following attendance at training sessions? Nobody wants to tell us anything? No? Fair enough. I've got no communications or reports that are not otherwise covered, and I have no urgent matters. So at this stage we go into part 2, please. So thank you to our visitors and the press.